overnight, the administration ordered a freeze that starts today on all federal grants, loans, and other aid. Now, that could amount to trillions in federal dollars.
All of Washington is trying to figure out exactly what it means. The White House appears to be calling on all agencies to impose a spending freeze on federal assistance by 5 p.m. today. And it appears that we're talking about everything from aid to nonprofit organizations to funding for universities. This could even affect loans to small businesses and grants to state and local governments.
There is a lot of confusion this morning about what exactly this directive means, but it may be the most far-reaching executive action this White House has taken yet. It could potentially halt hundreds of billions of dollars in federal spending on everything from assistance to farmers, to Head Start programs, to disaster relief and public transportation.
Now, in this memo, the Office of Management and Budget at the White House orders all federal agencies to assess all of their programs and activities to ensure that they comply with President Trump's recent executive orders. And in the meantime, it says all federal assistance must be temporarily frozen. The memo specifically mentions financial assistance for foreign aid, quote, woke gender ideology, and the Green New Deal. This memo, Gail, from the Trump White House argues, quote, that the use of federal dollars to advance Marxist equity, transgenderism, and Green New Deal social engineering policies is a waste of taxpayer dollars that does not improve the day-to-day lives of those we serve.
We're solidly in the second week of Donald Trump's fascist administration that not only abandoned the see-through promise of lowering prices on everything, but has now illegally hijacked federal aid programs. The chaotic decision also negatively impacts MAGA voters, who still haven't caught on that they're being targeted too.
In an instant, Donald Trump has shut off billions, perhaps trillions of dollars that directly support states, cities, towns, schools, hospitals, small businesses, and most of all, American families. This is a dagger at the heart of the average American family in red states, in blue states, in cities, in suburbs, in rural areas. Funds for things like disaster assistance, local law enforcement, rural hospitals, aid to the elderly, food for people in need, all are on the chopping block in this new administration. Why? They need tax cuts for the ultra-wealthy, and these cuts, they think, will fund them. This decision is lawless, dangerous, destructive, cruel. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional. I spoke to my Attorney General this morning. She's head of the State Attorneys General Association. They're going to court right away.
Chuck Schumer and Dems may be giving the country the facts about how aggressively this administration has decided to attack the country for their own objectives. But the ship has sailed on convincing anyone that didn't already see the dangerous signals that Trump gave the entire campaign. Senator Jeff Merkley told reporters what they plan to do about it in an attempt to protect the country.
The budget Dems are going to call upon the postponement, 2-week postponement of Mr. Vote's confirmation in committee, vote in committee, until we answer these questions and resolve this constitutional crisis.
Days before this administration followed the detailed plan from Russell Vought to unleash this kind of chaos on the country, Senator Merkley warned about his plans if he gets confirmed as the director of Office of Management and Budget.
The position of director of the Office of Management and Budget doesn't get the same attention as a Secretary of Defense nominee or an intelligence nominee or a health nominee, but that individual is the chief engineer of the Trump train. Yes, there's a car dedicated to defense and one to secretary, but the chief engineer is the head of OMB. They are absolutely critical to driving the agenda. That is why this nominee, Mr. Vote, is the most dangerous nominee put forward by Trump. He has a 3-part plan. The first part of the plan is to cut the programs for families across the country: health care, housing, education, programs for children. That's the first part of the plan. The second part of the plan is to borrow a massive amount, multiple trillions, and run up the deficit. And then the third part of the plan is to take the money saved by cutting programs for families and the money borrowed from the Treasury to give tax breaks for the wealthiest Americans.
Despite the administration's throwaway explanation that the freeze won't impact all the programs that Senators Merkley and Schumer outlined here, this move to hold the American people hostage while they determine if taxpayers deserve the programs that they paid for aligns with part of Volt's plan.
This, plain and simple, this is Project 2025. Project 2025 by another name. They knew how unpopular Project 2025 was, but the right-wing ideologues are still in control. So they had to do it in a different way, but it has the same consequences and will have the same horrible, negative, overwhelming reaction from the American people. And who is going to be the implementer of this? None other than the chief cook and bottle washer of Project 2025, Russell Vogt. Putting someone like Russell Vogt at OMB, the architect of Project 2025, is a huge danger sign to America.
You know, the biggest win that MAGA leadership has achieved is gaining this unconditional blind support from enough Americans that encourage them to openly do exactly what their detractors are warning us against. So when MAGA hears Chuck Schumer and Jeff Merkley point out that these moves are the elements of installing their fascist takeover, MAGA just plugs their ears and closes their eyes. I don't even think they paid attention to the videos of Russ Vought himself, detailing their Project 2025 plans to whistleblowers that were posing as donors.
80% of my time is working on the plans of what's necessary to take control of these bureaucracies. And we are working doggedly on that, whether it's destroying their agency's notion of independence. They're independent from the president.
Destroying an agency's notion of independence from the president, he said. You know, widespread warnings about MAGA's plans to consolidate power to the executive were dismissed. But now that any and everyone that they alone consider disloyal to the Justice Department for working on cases that prosecuted Donald Trump, those folks are being fired.
The Trump administration has fired over a dozen career prosecutors in the Justice Department's national security and criminal divisions. These are people who were involved in any way in the cases against Donald Trump. These officials received an email from the acting attorney general on Monday telling them, in part, given your significant role in prosecuting the president, I do not believe that the leadership of the department can trust you in implementing the president's agenda faithfully. Those fired, George, include some of the Justice Department's most senior prosecutors. These are individuals who have served in Republican and Democratic administrations.
They disregarded the law established by Congress to give them 30 days notice when firing nonpartisan inspectors general, which he did this week. And that took away their powers of tracking and investigating Trump's desire to abuse power. Those positions will now become partisan, and lackeys like Ted Cruz are eager to relinquish their power to allow it to happen. Watch this spineless exchange with him.
As a man of the law, and someone who I know talks about the principles of the law, I'm curious, two things that the president's done that I would imagine actually would outrage you, though I don't know if you would actually say it publicly, but I'm curious. One is firing the inspector generals, not firing the I'm not saying that that's the problem necessarily, but doing it without providing Congress with the 30 days that are enshrined in the law and describing in detail why. Is that something at all that upsets you, given that I do know you care about laws that you create?
Well, listen, under the Constitution, Article 2 of the Constitution gives the president the executive authority, and the executive authority is over every officer, every employee of the executive authority, and so the president has the authority under the Constitution to terminate people in the executive branch.
I'm saying that the law says, as you know, and was actually re-enshrined effectively a couple years ago, so that there was a 30-day requirement in terms of describing what was happening and the time period. Factually hasn't happened.
What I'm saying is the president has the authority to terminate people in the executive branch.
What about that part of the law? You think that's not a real law then?
I think at the end of the day, I'm looking at this first week of the administration, and I'm excited. I have never seen an administration with so much change, so much energy, and such a mandate from the voters.
I'm just asking you about the law itself, because there's like an actual law and then what's happening, which is different.
Well,
and I think you
look, Andrew, under our Constitution, Congress and the president are designed to struggle back and forth, and so we can pass laws putting constraints on the executive, but it is not new for the executive to press back on Congress, and that back and forth was designed by the framers.
And now the illegal move to bypass Congress again to freeze all federal aid while this gang of billionaires decide exactly how they'll redirect our money into their back pockets. It was always about stealing from citizens while taking away our rights and targeting the most oppressed in the country. They've bet on MAGA's blind hatred, and it's beginning to pay off.
George, this is far-reaching. The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer responded, one of many responding overnight, saying Congress approved these investments. They are not optional. They are the law. And you described it as a pause, George. It's important to point out this memo does not say how long the pause will last. There's nothing specifying when the pause is over.